Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up, where I talk about the books that I read, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. So there's a lot of noise going on outside. Apologies if you hear it. I'll try to edit it out, but this is literally like the fourth time I've tried to do this video today, and I only have pockets of time, so I'm going to try to get this done now. Okay, so I completed a few books this week. Let's start with this one. This is Olga Dies Dreaming, and this is by Xótchitl Gonzalez. This was a Book of the Month option, and I had seen it appearing on Bookstagram a little bit and in BookTube, and when I realized I hadn't read anything for Hispanic Heritage Month, which is currently, it's 15th of September through the 15th of October, I thought, oh, I think I have this, let me grab it. And this was surprising. This was really surprising. This is a contemporary novel set in 2017 in New York City, Brooklyn specifically. And we feature a family. We have Olga, who's our titular character, and she is a wedding planner, very successful, has made a good show for herself. And this is actually counter to what her family, specifically her mother, wanted for her. She came from a family of activists. They are Puerto Rican descent, immigrants from Puerto Rico, her mother and father were. And, her mother left the family to take on this activist role. Didn't really want to be a wife and mother. That was not what she wanted. And the father descended into drugs and passed away of AIDS. So there's a lot going on here. This reminds me a little bit of Louise Erdrich's The Sentence, in that through just talking about people in their daily life, we come across all of these issues that are taking place because their lives are very complex and what they're going through is very timely. So the themes in this book are themes of power, of political power, of immigration, difficult mothers, addiction, trauma. We also have identity happening here, but we also have things like budding romance and trust and secrets. So there's a lot going on. I will say this is a debut novel, and so maybe with debut novels, the author tries to throw a little bit too much in. But this worked for me. I enjoyed it very much. I thought that there were some things that were just a little too much too far, but I think it highlighted so much about what's happening in Puerto Rico, what's happening with the power structures, what's happening with support of Puerto Rico in New York. Her brother in this book is in politics. And so there's a lot about how his voice is leveraged and used to support his community and also in opposition of. So this packed quite a punch. I think it would be really good if you're looking for something that's engaging for Hispanic Heritage Month. This might be a good book that you might enjoy. So there we go. A book that I did not enjoy. This one I read with my very good friend Leo from Leo's Little Book Life on Instagram. This is number 21 of our Anita Brookner project. This is Anita Brookner's The Next Big Thing. Leo said it best. He said that we've moved from adoration to irritation with Anita because it literally is the same rote tropes, the same things, and it's tiresome at this stage. I don't think she's done anything new, revolutionary, and or interesting here. And in fact, I'll admit it, I skimmed. This is the first time I've ever skimmed an Anita Brookner, even though she's annoyed me before. So what's happening in this book is we have, instead of the Brookner woman, we have a Brookner man. And it's a 73-year-old Heinz. And Heinz is completely self-indulgent. He's completely obsessed with these two women in his life. One was his ex-wife, and the other is a woman that he knew growing up. It's his cousin that he, in some flight of fancy, went to visit her. And when he heard that she had become widowed, I think is what happened, and he shows up, and instead of having any kind of good graces, and instead of trying to get to know her, he just was fixated on the fact that he loved her, therefore he needed to have her, and therefore he proposed to her. And to all sorts of awkwardness. Meanwhile, he's still fixated on her. He still thinks that she's the one who got away, and maybe he should have stayed, and maybe he should have made a bigger deal about trying to woo her and win her over. And it's just all these machinations in his head, never really thinking about these women and what they want, or what they wanted from him, or how they viewed him. It's all about what they are to him, and can be to him, and how they can slide into his life. With Anita, the themes of loneliness are always present, and this is true here too. You know, he's at the end of his life, and he's dealing with loneliness, he's dealing with isolation, and all of these ghosts of his past. But ultimately, I just didn't like him as a character. I thought he was obnoxious. I thought he was just the sad sack of this guy. And Anita did this thing in this book where she tells you that he's very smart. She tells you that he's very well read. She tells you that he loves art and that he loves philosophy. But you never see him engaging in any of that material, except for, you know, a Hardy that sits on his side table, or that he goes to see the Turners every once in a while in the gallery, or that he quotes Freud. But there's no deep engagement with it. And so it really felt like Anita's talking about herself yet again. So yeah, Leo and I have very limited hopes for how we're going to end this project in December. I can't imagine that she's going to change at this stage, because it's been too much the same thing all along. But this one just absolutely did not work for me. And I will say, I think it may work for somebody who doesn't know her, who hasn't read so many of her books. But in this project, as we're reading her entire oeuvre from earliest publication to latest, I've just seen it too often for it to work for me. So it was depressing. I skimmed it. Not a fan, Anita. Not a fan. And then I have a book. I did this was part of my group read that I did for the month of September, this massive tome. This is the Books of Jacob, by Olga Tocharchuk, and it is translated by Jennifer Croft. I read this with brilliant group of people. Now, this is a really hard book to talk about because there's so much that happens here. It's a maximalist book. It's a historical fiction book about a very crafty, cynical, exploitative con man who poses as a messiah named Jacob Frank. And what we do is we hear about everyone around him and looking at him, talking about him, giving his narrative of what happens in his life ever since he was seen as a new messiah. What Olga Tocharchuk has done here is she's provided this historical fiction that has so much atmosphere. It has so many layers, so much density in terms of culture, in terms of history, in terms of Jewish faith, the Jewish sects, the Jewish splintering off that was happening in Eastern Europe, Poland and Ukraine specifically. Poland existed, but Ukraine did not at the time. So fascinating for its depictions of Jewish culture, depictions of the world at this time, challenging in that so much of this is about displacement and power and community and faith and trust. And part of what ends up happening with this community that ends up following this character is that they change names and identities as they shift and move for many, many different reasons. But that makes this challenging to stay on top of, challenging to keep the thread of who's who and who's talking. And so you just kind of have to let that go and just be immersed in it. I would say the writing was phenomenal, moved very fast. I mean, I was able to read this pretty quickly, even though it is gigantic. It's absolutely gigantic. But I learned so much about this time period that I literally had no idea about. I was woefully ignorant. And the insights and conversations that we had in the group read were remarkable, just absolutely remarkable. I cannot thank the people that read with me enough. This was, for me, it was a solid 3 in that there's a lot that I admire here. I think reading it with other people was the key to keeping it firm and keeping it in the forefront of my thoughts. It actually could be a 3.5 with their support and their conversation. But yeah, that's kind of where it sits for me. So it's no drive your plow over the bones of the dead, which is my favorite Olga Tocharchuk. But I will read more from her without a doubt. This is a feat for her to actually pull this off, and I can see why it's been so well received. So that's what I read. Because I was so busy with those, I did not get a chance to read that much more into The Shooting Party by Isabel Colgate. But I'm telling you, I love this book so far. I am enjoying it so much that I'm savoring it. So I'm trying to create a space where this is the only thing I can focus on, so I can suck all the juices from it, because it's that good. I'm enjoying it that much. It has very much of a Gosford Park kind of vibe, where there's all these characters and all this movement and everything's happening in and out, and how Gosford Park has that upstairs downstairs vibe. Gosford Park is the movie, one of my favorite movies. This has more of an indoor outdoor, so it's the manor house where all of the people are guests, and the people who live there are gathering for the shooting party. And then the outdoors, all of the people who are supporting the shooting party, the beaters, the gameskeeper, and even an animal rights activist who kind of does this thing and is trying to interfere and change people's minds. A lot of interesting characters. It's a little bit of a blur, but then you're starting to kind of pick people out and follow their cross stories and the threads. So far, let's see, I'm about halfway through. I really hope I hope it can stick the landing, because man, this bodes incredibly well for my Elizabeth Colgate project of reading all of her work. So fingers crossed there. And then I have started this. So this is the last of my 2022 group read projects. I started with Tomb of Sand, and that was a couple months ago. Then we did Books of Jacob, and now we're doing the Balkan Trilogy by Olivia Manning. I got this at Blackwells. I did it online. It's this huge tome, gorgeous cover. And this has the 3, The Great Fortune, The Spoilt City, and Friends and Heroes. I have not had a chance to actually read this, so I'm going to spend my time this week doing that for our first check-in on Sunday. And then for my In Real Life book club, we're going to be talking about 2 additional books for our next book club meeting. The first one is O William by Lucy Strout, and then the second is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. So I'm really looking forward to reading those. I started O William on audio today, and I think that's a good choice. I don't think I'm losing anything from the audio and not reading it in my hands. That's boding well. So that's it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'd love to know, have you read any of these and what your thoughts have been? And I'll look forward to talking to you next week. Okay, bye-bye.